Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to go my review of AEW's Dynamite Grand Slam. Starting off the evening, we're going to go to our first match of the night. It is a title versus title matchup. It is for the Ring of Honor World Championship as well as the New Japan Strong Openweight Championship. It is Eddie Kingston versus Claudio Castagnoli. I thought this was a great match to start Grand Slam last night. Back and forth matchup between Kingston and Castagnoli, with Kingston and Claudio both exchanging in the middle of the ring. Claudio then hits a back suplex on Kingston off the ramp that looked absolutely brutal. Kingston then gets up, hits an enziguri on Claudio. Claudio then gets up, hits a straight jacket powerbomb on Eddie Kingston for a near fall. Kingston then hits 3 spinning back fists on Claudio, as well as a Northern Light suplex. And then Kingston ultimately hits a powerbomb on Claudio Castagnoli, pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match and new Ring of Honor World Champion is Eddie Kingston. Hats off to Eddie Kingston for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Sammy Guevara versus Chris Jericho. I thought this was a great matchup as well. Back and forth matchup between Guevara and Jericho. Guevara and Jericho then both exchanged in the middle of the ring, but Guevara was keeping the pace of the match. Jericho then hits a code breaker on Guevara, as well as a suplex off the apron. Jericho then hits a hurricanrana off the top rope on Guevara. Guevara then gets up, hits a Spanish fly on Jericho. Guevara then hits a code breaker on Jericho for a near fall. Guevara then hits a moonsault to the outside, taking out Jericho. Guevara then goes for a GTH, but Jericho counters it with a Walls of Jericho, but the hold is broken. Jericho then hits a lion salt on Guevara. Guevara then gets up, hits a GTH on Jericho. Guevara then goes for a shooting star press, but Jericho counters it with a code breaker, pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Chris Jericho. After the match, Guevara then hits a low blow on Jericho. Don Callis is here, and it looks like Don Callis is trying to recruit Sammy Guevara. But hats off to Chris Jericho for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the AEW International Championship. It is Jon Moxley versus Rey Fenix. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Moxley and Phoenix, with Moxley and Phoenix both exchanging in the middle of the ring, with Moxley keeping the pace of the match. Phoenix then goes to the top rope, hits a frog splash on Moxley for a near fall. Moxley then gets up, hits a pile driver for a near fall on Phoenix. Phoenix then gets up, hits a senton off the top rope, and then Phoenix ultimately hits 2 devastating pile drivers on Jon Moxley, pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match and new AEW International Champion is Rey Fenix. Hats off to Rey Fenix for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's for the AEW Women's Championship. It is Saraya versus Toni Storm. Again, I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Saraya and Toni Storm, with Saraya keeping the pace of the match. Storm then hits Saraya with a shoe. Saraya and Storm both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Saraya hitting Toni Storm with spray paint. Referee doesn't see it. Toni then hits a Storm Zero on Saraya for a near fall, but Saraya gets up, hits the finish on Toni Storm, pins her for the 3, and your winner of the match and still AEW Women's Champion is Saraya. Hats off to Saraya for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of AEW's Grand Slam. It is Samoa Joe versus MJF for the AEW World Championship. Before the match even gets started, MJF pays a little tribute to Bret Hart when Hart did the New Generation for, I believe it was for Raw intro, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. Paying a little homage to the legend himself, Bret Hart, which I thought was absolutely cool. The match itself was a great match, man. It was a back and forth matchup between Joe and MJF. Joe was keeping the pace of the match. MJF then hits a kangaroo kick on Samoa Joe. Joe then hits a devastating Death Valley driver on MJF. Joe then puts MJF through a table on the outside. Joe then hits a pile driver on MJF on the exposed floor. MJF then gets up, hits a Liger bomb for a near fall. MJF then hits a low blow on Joe, but then Joe ultimately hits a low blow on MJF. Joe then hits a muscle buster on MJF for a near fall. Adam Cole was here. He runs down to the ring. Cole was trying to fire up MJF. The referee is taken out, and then MJF applies a chokehold on Samoa Joe. Referee finally sounds for the bell, and your winner of the match and still AEW World Champion is MJF. Hats off to MJF for getting the win in that matchup. A couple things I want to say about last night's Grand Slam show, man. This was probably the best Dynamite so far this summer, in my honest opinion, man. From top to bottom, this show was absolutely phenomenal. With the opening matchup, man, we had Kingston and Claudio Castagnoli. It was a solid match, man. It really was. And to be honest with you, the right guy won that matchup last night, man. Eddie Kingston, I'd be very surprised if there's a lot of people that hate Eddie Kingston, man. Eddie Kingston is one of those guys who's an absolute legend, in my honest opinion. He has great mic work, mic skills. He's great in the ring. And like I said, man, the right man won this matchup. Sky's the limit for Eddie Kingston. And people have to realize this, man. Back, I think, when, the whole pandemic started and everything else like that, Eddie Kingston was going to retire. He chose not to retire, and he's had some phenomenal matches in AEW, man. The match that, put him on the map was obviously the match he had with Cody Rhodes, which ultimately got him his contract in AEW. And it's been, hell on wheels for Eddie Kingston since he's been with AEW. It's been phenomenal stuff. And like I said, man, the right man won this matchup last night. It's only going to elevate Ring of Honor even more. I'm not taking anything away from Claudio Castagnoli. But it's Eddie Kingston's time, man. Eddie Kingston, he's done phenomenal things over in Japan with the strong openweight championship. And now that he's a Ring of Honor world champion, it's only going to elevate Ring of Honor even more. And my hats go off to Eddie Kingston. So, again, it's very cool that he won the match. And I look forward to what's going to happen next with Kingston, man. Who is he going to challenge next, or who's going to challenge Kingston, I should say, next for the Ring of Honor World Championship? Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara was a hot topic last night after what happened with his match with Jericho and Don Callis. Don Callis is probably one of the biggest heels right now in the company. And people just love to hate Don Callis. And the fact that Don Callis came down to the ring after this match and essentially pretty much recruited Sammy Guevara to the Don Callis family, man. I mean, sky's the limit for Guevara. This whole time everybody was, had expectations that Jericho and Guevara were going to reunite and chase after the AEW tag team titles. I don't think that's going to happen right now. With that being said, I was a little surprised that Jericho went over in this matchup. I thought for sure Guevara was going to get the win in this match, but Jericho ended up becoming victorious in this matchup with that code breaker. I'm all for Guevara being a heel. Absolutely. I think right now what Don Callis is doing with the Don Callis family is absolutely phenomenal stuff. Right now the biggest name Don Callis has on his stable is Takeshita. And Takeshita has a high-profile matchup coming up against Kota Ibushi. And just, possibly adding Sammy Guevara to the mix of that, man, it's going to be absolutely phenomenal stuff. And like I said this before, when Guevara was going to team up with Jericho to go after the tag team belts, I think it's better for Guevara to be on a singles run, to be honest with you. I think Guevara has a lot of potential. He's a great athlete, great wrestler, and right now, with him joining up with Don Callis, this gives Guevara more opportunities at high-profile matches. The same thing that we're getting with Takeshita. And just gives him, future title opportunities, whether it's a TNT Championship or International Championship or even the AEW World Championship. So I'm all for Guevara turning heel and joining Don Callis. There was even a backstage incident that happened backstage. I wouldn't say incident, but Don Callis and Guevara were walking backstage, and Renee was trying to get a word from Don Callis about if, Guevara did join the Don Callis family. Obviously, Don Callis wasn't going to elaborate on that information. And told everybody that he had to, wait till next week. But when, Guevara and Don Callis walk away from Renee, Guevara and Don Callis spot Danny Garcia. And Guevara and Garcia get face-to-face, and Don Callis tells Guevara, no, he's money, don't mess with him. And they walk off. So, who knows, man? I think Don Callis is right now on a recruitment trip, if you will, to try to recruit people to the Don Callis family. And you got to put Garcia in the mix as well. Garcia is a fantastic wrestler, great athlete. There's a lot of people that support what Danny Garcia is doing. So why not? You had Takeshita, Guevara, Daniel Garcia possibly. Who knows? Right now the Don Callis family is looking pretty interesting right now. And hopefully we get some more insight on what Guevara is going to be doing with Don Callis for the foreseeable future. And whether or not he's going to join the Don Callis family. So that, again, was a hot topic last night. Jon Moxley, he had a great back-and-forth matchup with Rey Fenix last night. Man, it was a great matchup. But there's been, a lot of speculation about Jon Moxley after this match. Supposedly, after the two pile drivers that, Phoenix had landed on Moxley, it caused Jon Moxley to have a concussion. He was able to walk back, backstage area and stuff like that, but it's been reported that supposedly he had suffered a concussion from the pile drivers in that matchup with Rey Fenix last night, which is unfortunate. If he does have a concussion, obviously he's going to be out for a little bit. So I don't know if he's going to make Wrestle Dream or not. Which again, if that's the case, man, it's, that's sad in itself. Now, do I believe Rey Fenix was was he actually scheduled to win this matchup? I don't think so. I think, AEW had to pull an audible due to the fact that Moxley had a concussion and they put the belt on Rey Fenix. Not taking anything away from Rey Fenix, but I don't think Rey Fenix was actually supposed to win that match last night. I think it was supposed to be Jon Moxley, because there was no way, after what Moxley did with Orange Cassidy, that he was just going to drop the belt after just winning it to Rey Fenix. There was no way. I refuse to believe that. But again, hats off to Rey Fenix. I'm hoping he's going to be a part of Wrestle Dream as well as Jon Moxley, but it's still up in the air. Saraya and Toni Storm, again, solid matchup. I was kind of hoping that Toni Storm would get the win. I'm loving what Toni Storm is doing right now, man. Toni Storm, her new character, her new persona, if you will, is absolutely flawless, man. It's awesome. And she's immensely over right now in AEW. And I was kind of hoping Toni Storm would get the win, but unfortunately Saraya got the victory over Toni Storm and was able to defend her AEW Women's Championship. And Samoa Joe and MJF, the main event. It was a solid matchup. And again, man, those two guys tore the house down, man. That match was phenomenal. But the biggest thing I'll take away from that main event match was Adam Cole. It was also speculated that Adam Cole also suffered an injury when he was running down to the ring to kind of, fire up MJF. It looked like he had hurt his ankle, possibly sprained it, possibly fractured or broken. Hopefully none of those things, and hopefully he's able to wrestle at Wrestle Dream. But supposedly he had to go to the hospital, and after he left the hospital, he was actually in crutches. So we don't know really what's going on right now with Adam Cole or Moxley for this, at this very point. But it was reported that Moxley had sustained a concussion from the match he had with Rey Fenix, and Adam Cole had supposedly injured his ankle last night as well at Grand Slam. With that being said, man, Grand Slam last night was a phenomenal show. I'm not going to sit here and say it was the greatest Dynamite I've ever seen, but as far as this summer, yeah, it's been the best Dynamite this summer for sure. I mean, this had more hype around it, more build, more storyline build into these matches than I truly, honestly believe All Out. I think this Grand Slam show was better than All Out, in my honest opinion. But again, man, I look forward to what's going to happen next. Obviously, Wrestle Dream is the next pay-per-view on the horizon, which takes place October 1st live from Seattle, Washington. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I know Swerve and Adam Page actually have a contract signing for their matchup for Wrestle Dream this coming week on Dynamite. So it's very interesting to see what happens with that. Obviously, more matches had to be announced for Wrestle Dream because I think they only have 3 matches, I think, right now booked for the show, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. So obviously they have to add more matches. And the other thing that kind of took me by surprise is that there was no surprises for Grand Slam last night. I believe last year, I think it was Saraya that debuted, if I'm not mistaken. So I was kind of surprised that we didn't see the likes of a Mercedes Moné or a possible Edge. Now, I know Edge wasn't going to be there last night because he's still currently under contract with WWE right now. But I was surprised we didn't see a Mercedes Moné or a possible return, maybe a Thunder Rosa. I've heard that she's cleared to come back and return to wrestle. I don't know what's going on with Wardlow, to be exact. I don't know if he's injured. I don't know what's going on with that situation. But I'm very surprised that we didn't get a return, or a surprise for that matter, last night on Grand Slam. But it was a great show, man. The stage structure was completely different than a normal Collision or Dynamite. It was a fantastic show, man. It really was. From top to bottom, it was a solid show. And honestly, I think it was way better than what All Out was. It was also rumored that Tony Khan, I don't know if it was after it went off the air last night or not, that he teased a pay-per-view, possibly coming to New York. I know that there's been a lot of speculation that Tony Khan and AEW want to have another pay-per-view after Full Gear, so probably sometime December. I heard December 29th. That's what's been speculated as far as another pay-per-view this year for AEW after Full Gear. And honestly, I do want to touch base on that as well, man. I totally believe that, the way it's looking right now, AEW is going to go to a full 12-month pay-per-view schedule going into 2024. I also truly believe that AEW and Tony Khan are going to be, working with HBO Max, or Max, if you will, sometime next year. I can completely see them doing that. I think right now, especially with what Max is doing right now, they just added, or are going to add, like a sports package to Max, which is like an additional charge of $10 from what I heard, and it's like NBA, stuff like that, in NFL and stuff like that. But I can 100% see, AEW being somewhat a part of Max or vice versa. 100%. Because at the end of the day, man, right now, television-wise, a lot of it is streaming. A lot of it. And whether it's Peacock, Hulu, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, a lot of things nowadays are going over to streaming services right now. And I even said this a while back too when all this stuff came out with all these streaming services that I think regular cable television is going to go away probably in the next 5-10 years. I would not be surprised, man. Everything right now is on a streaming service. Everything. So I would not be surprised nor shocked if, somehow AEW is working with HBO Max or vice versa. I would not be surprised, man. It brings more people to the product, and honestly, I think for either both the consumer and, for AEW as a whole, it just benefits both parties, man. If you're paying $10 a month for, HBO Max or $100 a year or what have you, even if you're not, a casual wrestling fan and you were like, I want to dabble in wrestling but see what HBO Max is about, it's a win-win, man. There's a lot of things on Max, obviously, that you can watch, new movies, TV shows, stuff like that. And, for fans of wrestling, having, HBO Max be a part of AEW, I mean, it's a win-win, honestly. It gives AEW more revenue, obviously, if they decide to work with HBO Max. Obviously, it gets more eyes on the product for people actually being, the consumer just of HBO Max and watching it on a, regular basis. It just gets more eyes on the product. And honestly, for what it's worth, I mean, Tony Khan, speaking of Tony Khan, he has the library for Ring of Honor. And we've had a lot of matches and great moments for AEW. Why not put that into a video package kind of deal for HBO Max or create a library? It's the same thing that what Peacock does with, WWE. It's, you get old WCW stuff, ECW, old WWE shows, so on and so forth. So why not do that with, AEW for HBO Max? Obviously, AEW doesn't have a catalog of, events like WWE has because WWE has been around for, years and years and years and years. But I think it's definitely a smart, choice or direction, if you will, to go with HBO Max for next year for AEW. I 100% see that happening. And I'm all for it, man. I was kind of against the 12 pay-per-views a year for AEW, but, as of late, man, they have so many people on that roster. You can build great storylines, and everybody on that roster can get, a pay-per-view match. Build it up into a storyline. Why not? It's only going to intensify what the roster is doing right now, in my honest opinion. And again, I think Tony Khan's going to be full steam ahead with a 12 pay-per-view format every year, starting next year. I mean, there's already talks about him having another pay-per-view after Full Gear in December. So I think those wheels are starting to finally turn as far as, AEW having more pay-per-views starting next year. So I'm all for it, man. I'm definitely excited for Wrestle Dream as well. I'm hoping that Adam Cole and Jon Moxley are not seriously injured, but it looks like Moxley definitely suffered a concussion, and Adam Cole has some kind of ankle injury from what was going on last night. So hopefully, things work out for Adam Cole. It's unfortunate if Jon Moxley did suffer a concussion. Obviously, if he does have a concussion, he's going to take some time off. But again, man, it's just unfortunate for Jon Moxley and Adam Cole as of what's going on with them right now. But all in all, it was a solid show. I think it was probably the best Dynamite show of the summer so far, and I definitely look forward to what's going to happen next. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite Grand Slam. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.